This episode, we have comic book creator and crowdfunding wizard Pat Shand. You know what? He's probably a regular wizard, too. Today on The Literate Nerd. Okay, I'm here with my guest, Mr. Pat Shand, and we're going to do plugs at the end of the episode also, but what's the most recent book that you have out right now, or that you're crowdfunding right now, I should say? What's your most recent project?
Well, right now, I have coming out through Black Mask in March. It's going to be Destiny New York issue 1. You know, it's a series that I've kickstarted it for years. We've done multiple graphic novels, but we haven't really seen a presence of the story in shops, in local comic shops. So now we're going to be putting it out as a single issue series, an ongoing series through Black Mask, who is my publisher on Staff Life's Hustle, Breathless, on a bunch of previous work. And yeah, that's going to be in March. It's in previews for pre-order now. The very basic synopsis is that it is the story of a woman named Logan. She was the target of a prophecy when she was young. She completed her destiny when she was just 13, and now she's in her 30s trying to figure out a life beyond destiny. So it's kind of like what happens after the fantasy story ends.
Yeah, well, I picked up the first trade paperback of it at a con. I remember when it, one of the many times we ran into each other at various conventions. Yeah. And it's, you're writing, you managed to catch this kind of like street level realism of what it's like to be just an average person kind of caught in the, the gears of just day-to-day life. And then there's all this other amazing, fantastical stuff that's going on as well. Magic and, gods and demons and the gamut of that, but, and that's something that's I've always found really cool about your work is that, these people are having, these amazing adventures, but it's also like, they got to fucking get up for work in the morning.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, the truth is that I've never been a genre person. My first projects were all in theater, and I kind of found myself doing comics, and in comics, so much of what you're doing is figuring out how to combine ideas, how to do these big elevator pitches for genre stories. So my idea was to have this big sort of like genre idea that you go in thinking, okay, this is the story about the fantasy is over, and then this is when life begins. And my way into that was to just tell it from the perspective of, so someone living in that world who isn't super concerned with all the magical goings on, where we can actually find out how someone lives in this kind of a world, a mythology when the magical threat, when all that kind of stuff is gone. And it is still part of the book in some ways, but yeah, the core of what I want to do on that title, and mostly in my work, is just to tell stories about people. And that is, my main goal in Destiny New York is to make people fall in love with these characters first and foremost as characters, rather than like kind of buying in for the concept,
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I always have defended genre fiction, across the board, and genre content across the board by saying, I don't care if you're telling a story that takes place in the Old West. I don't care if you're telling a story that takes place in the Tokugawa shogunate. I don't care if you're telling a story that takes place on a prehistoric Mars where civilization is collapsed collapsed before mankind ever walked the earth. If you're telling a good story about the human condition, that's what matters.
Right.
You know?
Definitely.
And now, speaking of stories about the human condition, let's talk about Godzilla versus King Kong.
Yeah.
How was that segue, man? Was that pretty good?
You know, it was very professional. It was very good.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. So I wanted to actually take a chance to say this. Yeah. Normally we do the first segment is near mint to poor condition. And, where I talk about, a positive news story in the world of nerddom and then a negative story about what's going on. And this week it was nice. Like nobody had original artwork stolen from them. There weren't, massive layoffs at one of the big companies. It was a nice week. Obviously what happened last week, I'll footnote it. I don't want to bring it up with what, once again, a certain fandom, has gotten, they just, they have to be a certain fandom, but I don't even want to go into that. Like I said, it's, yeah. So, so this is just, instead of near mint to poor condition, this is near mint. And I wanted to start off by saying that I love kaiju movies, and
wait, hold on. Before we move on though, can I just as a game, because I don't pay attention to pop culture at all anymore. So can I guess, just based on my knowledge, what certain fandom it was and what they did, just as a fun game?
Yes, absolutely. Do you want to stop recording and we'll start recording again?
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just a very lighthearted guess. I'm going to guess that it was about the Zack Snyder fandom, and that they had a funny response to that new Marvel series, WandaVision.
No, actually, it wasn't about that. It was
okay.
It was the horrible treatment of Star Wars fandom for Christina. I'm sorry, I should have had this footnoted. I was going to bring it up, but young lady Christina, whose last name escapes me, and I'll take this out and re-record it. But of course, she's a person of color, and Bounding into Comics, of course, published an article about her that claimed that she said, "I hate all white people." And of course,
gotcha. Yeah. I
and the Star Wars fandom ran with it, but luckily also fandom came out and said, "We stand with Christina."
Cool. Yeah, that is just kind of fun for me because I generally don't know that much about, specifically those fandoms, but really, thankfully, fandom in general anymore. I've really tuned out Twitter, and it's just, dude, it makes life so much better. So that was just a fun little guess.
Yeah, no, well, they are notorious. That fan base you mentioned is also notorious for just taking things, out of hand, but,
yeah.
But when I had mentioned to you in a message earlier that King Kong was a close personal imaginary friend of mine when I was 3 years old.
I was about to clarify what age. Yeah, so yes. three to when though?
I just always loved King Kong.
Gotcha.
My parents are they're good friends who lived up the block. In their basement, they had a gigantic, it had to be, I was a kid, so maybe it wasn't as, no, but it was the entire back wall of their basement, which had like a pool table and a bar and everything, was Kong standing on top of the Empire State Building. A gigantic blown up photo of it. And as a kid, it just, it had made such an impression on me. And when I was 3 and a half, I don't know, my mother had a very difficult time getting me out of the ape house at the Bronx Zoo when I saw the silverback. And to this day, it gets a smile on her face that I was, goodbye, Kong. I love you, Kong. So, but that being said, I've always respected the so-called king of monsters, Godzilla. So, I mean, first off, the trailer. No, I mean, it looks beautiful. It's got it was actually one of the podcasts I listened to today, the Daily Zeitgeist. They were talking about the guy that does the music.
Yeah.
For it. And all he does is like soundtrack stuff. And he does this kind of like new metal rap kind of soundtrack stuff. But you hear it and it works. It works almost as well as any kind of like John Williams, orchestration rising and stuff, gets you pumped.
That's kind of funny. I mean, I don't know much about Godzilla, but what I do know is that when I was a teenager growing up, there was a movie in the early 2000s, and they also did use a sort of like rap rock fusion with P. Diddy's "Come With Me." I want to fight you. I'll fucking bite you. Can't stand nobody like you,
Yeah, absolutely. That was was that the thing that they not the Broderick Godzilla, right? No, that was earlier than that, and that had like a collaboration between, was it Puffy and Jimmy Page from Zeppelin? I know it was Jimmy Page. I think it was Jimmy Page. I forget.
Well, we're getting halfway there together because I know it was Puffy, but I don't know who Jimmy Page is.
Okay, it was Puffy and Jimmy Page then. Jimmy Page, the guitarist for Led Zeppelin, notorious for stealing any number of licks from better black musicians and having a rather colored history with his treatment of underage girls. So, but that's another podcast we can talk about.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Led Zeppelin, and the awful stuff that they did.
What I remember is I just thought it was so funny that in one music video, Diddy, he's in these like super slick kind of coats, and he's like this like just like a suave presence. He was more of a rec exec back then, and then all of a sudden in this Godzilla song, he's saying, "I'll fucking bite you." It's like Diddy's threatening to bite me. All right. All right. He's coming on. Well, there is. We do know that there is precedent for dangerous people who sit behind soundboards in the recording industry, from Phil Spector to Suge Knight. Oh yeah, dude. I mean, I didn't know much about Phil Spector. I know a bit more about Suge Knight, but Phil Spector, I actually was recently reading up on what he did, and crazy. There's nothing to say, but he's crazy.
I mean, the Ramones album, that End of the Century, that he did with them, is a fucking masterpiece. There's no doubt about it. But he basically held them hostage. And he used to do he was very much like, like the drug dealer that won't let you leave. That's exactly what he would get insanely high and then like have musicians play like one note, or like one drum lick over and over again. But
yeah, for some reason, just obviously he's a bad guy, but Suge's antics seem a bit more whimsical to me. Like obviously he did a lot of bad things, but it's just so funny to me, the story about him hanging Vanilla Ice off the balcony by his ankles.
It is one of the greatest stories in rock and roll history. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just great. Yeah,
fucking brilliant.
For some reason, I just I have a bit more distance from rock, where I'll read a story, I'm like, oh wow, that guy is insane. But with Suge, it's like he's a part, as dark of a part of history that was. He's a part of a history of this thing that I love,
And also his, he was influential, as a creator. Yeah. I mean, he was a fucking gangster motherfucker, in the purest of terms. But like, Phil Spector was just crazy.
Yeah.
Like Phil Spector was like, like held people prisoner at his mansion for days on end, you know, because he wanted somebody to smoke crack in front of, you know. It's fucking